brought to you by Squarespace. Hello. Are you ready for some selfish content? If you've been on this channel for even a fraction of a millisecond, you probably know that I've developed a rather unhealthy obsession with this little 90s show called Buffy the Vampire Slayer. I don't know why this is the case. I didn't grow up with it. I only first saw the show like maybe a year ago, and yet it has ingrained itself so deeply into my identity that I don't know where to stop, and I in fact am rewatching it again. But the reasons behind this obsession are indeed beside the point. If I knew why I liked the things I liked, I would not be spending so very much on therapy. The point of this video is, it is almost Selfish Content Month. It is also almost Halloween month. And I know that one of the costumes that I desperately want to do as like one of my casual side costumes is Buffy Summers, the aforementioned vampire slayer herself. The only issue with trying to do a Buffy Summers cosplay is she kind of does just look like a girl who walked out of Forever 21 in 2002. Like, there's not a whole lot of identifying aesthetic themes going on besides obviously blonde hair. There is, of course, usually a stake in her hand. There are a few iconic outfits, such as black tank top, red leather pants. There's also one of my personal favorites, all black boots, black leather jacket, cheetah print mini dress, and sometimes your girl's just in a turtleneck, which is not exactly my speed. As a maximalist, if I'm going to do this costume, I need an aesthetic signifier where it is undeniable that I am indeed cosplaying Buffy Summers herself. So in this video, I want to make that very prop. And that prop is a very possibly little known relic from season 7 of the show, which some of you who like the show maybe haven't even seen. The Buffy the Vampire Slayer combination stake and scythe. Even though this item does not come in until like the literal very end of the show, I still think of it in my mind as being very iconic. Your girl also just loves a scythe, can't really beat it. And I'm also having one of those weeks where I tried to do a different project and it blew up in my face, and I'm totally not making this video because I'm kind of just scrambling for time. So let's go down to the graveyard, the crypt, to see if we can pattern this thing out. So this, like some of my other recent projects, is going to be a foam stash busting project and kind of just a general stash busting project because I am a literal rat and I stash every single useful material that I can find. I'm trying to limit myself to like not buying new stuff for this. The only new thing that I have bought for this project is just some poster board to pattern things out with, but otherwise, I got my giant boxes of foam, miscellaneous dowel rods, a bunch of warbler. I also, somewhere around here, have... Where are you? Oh, this is not a good thing for me to misplace. Aha! Some scrap PVC. I think my general plan here is just to attach these pieces back together and use these as kind of a base for what I'm making here and just sort of build around it because, again, I have this on hand, I'm gonna use it. And then finally, I established in this video that I have a giant bin of foam. Hi, Tiger. Do you feel like sharing yourself with the class? She said no, absolutely not. Here. The cat is here too. In this video, I shared with you all that I have this giant bin of scrap foam that I have accumulated over the course of probably 10 years of doing cosplay, and I can indeed fit inside it. I really need to do something about this whole situation. I'm gonna try to use as much foam from this box as I can. As an aside, if you have any suggestions of what other things I can do to get this out of my life in a productive and creative way, I'm all ears. Please tell me in the comments below. I need help. I definitely thought about printing out a pattern for this scythe so that I could more accurately capture the proportions and everything going on, but for some reason I like to do life on hard mode, so I'm gonna just draw out a template. Why not? So my general strategy here is just to kind of go in. It's not even a strategy at all. I'm really just gonna grab my reference photo here and start to eyeball the size and shape based on the two pieces of PVC that I have. So this is the scale that I'm going for, which I feel like is pretty close to the general scale that they have in the show. I'm thinking about making mine just like a little bit bigger because I think that that would be way cooler, actually. Like, why would I choose to have a small scythe whenever I could simply have a bigger scythe, you know? I feel like proportionally, the area that attaches to the blade is probably like, maybe extends like that much. It's made so that you can hold it like that. I do like the design of this weapon a lot though. It's like kind of super silly, but I also think that it's honestly pretty cool. I'm into it. Don't know what that says about my taste. Okay. Why did I start at this point on the page? Can you guys tell that this is very much like an impulse project? Ow. Can you get in my lap or stop clawing me in the leg? Choose one. Those are your options. I'm talking to a cat, by the way. I feel like I should clarify that. Let's see. We go like this, and then like this, and it's got like a tooth in the front, and then the tooth goes like that. And I feel like that's sort of the shape. I feel like it needs to be bigger on the top though. Is this a stupid way to go about doing things and I should have just like placed this in a better place on the poster board to begin with? Yeah. You're watching the raw creative process here. No thoughts, no plans, just vibes. Where's my masking tape? My masking tape is so effective that it's masking itself from me finding it. Where did you go? Where's my masking tape? Okay, found it. I actually feel like this is pretty good like size and proportions. This is a little annoying because the length of PVC I have, basically right down the middle is where the joint is gonna be, but I'm gonna probably cover this up with Worbla later on to strengthen it and reinforce it, so that's gonna be fine. But otherwise, check that out. Not too bad for completely winging it and not measuring the proportions at all. Now I gotta go see if I have foam for this, which I'm not entirely sure if I do. Before we get too deep into this, if you, like me, are an artist and you make all kinds of weird stuff, you might be in need of a portfolio, and you can build one with this video's sponsor, Squarespace. With Squarespace, you can build a professional-looking website in just about an hour. You can start by selecting whatever creative or business niche your site would fall under, and from there you can choose from dozens of stunning, flexible website templates that you can either use as is, or for a starting point for your customization. As a maximalist who really doesn't know when to stop, I really appreciate how easy it is to add custom website graphics and media using their drag-and-drop website builder Fluid Engine. And as someone who primarily uses my website as a portfolio, their features like automatic image scaling allow me to keep my galleries updated with the click of a button. Plus, their numerous tools for customization mean I can design individual pages where I can create portfolios that focus on specific projects, or even pages as niche as character profiles. But the convenience doesn't end there, because Squarespace also has extensive resources for sellers through their e-commerce platform, like shipping labels, inventory, website analytics, flexible payment options, and more. And they also have resources for people like me who don't have time to create their prints and stickers by hand, so I can sell my artwork through their custom merch print-on-demand service that fulfills the orders for me. So if you want to start your own website or portfolio to fulfill any one of your heart's weird desires, head to squarespace.com for a free trial, and when you're ready to launch, head to squarespace.com/PricklyAlpaca to save 10% off your first purchase of a website or domain. Thanks as always to Squarespace for sponsoring this video. Now let's get back to it.
Upon locating my craft foam, the first step was to transfer the blade pattern onto the foam twice, because my plan was to sandwich those two pieces together to make it a little bit sturdier. And after I struggled to cut those out with my leather dulled X-Acto blade, I could slip on my respirator and whip out the barge cement to begin gluing everything together. I applied my glue to both sides of my foam and also to the area of the PVC that I wanted to glue it to. Before sticking all those pieces together, I inserted a couple of dowel rods between the two pieces of foam to help stabilize them a little bit more. Not that you can tell that's what I'm doing, because I decided to sit right in front of the camera. Very convenient. But once the blade was stabilized and stuck together, I could glue it to the end of the PVC, and just like that, this thing's already looking like a scythe. Or really more like an axe. The reason they call it a scythe kind of eludes me. That's not what this is. For the two red pieces on either side of the blade, I had some clear Worbla lying around, so I cut out that red shape from the pattern, traced and cut it out from my clear Worbla, of course making sure to flatten it out with a heat gun between steps to prevent it from getting all wrinkly. And then those pieces also got doused in barge cement and glued onto the blade. Then it was finally time to secure the two pieces of PVC together and create the top of the leather handle. I of course did this by clumping up just a lot of Worbla, both inside of the two shafts of PVC, sorry to use that word, and also around the outside to create a little bit of a bevel. I also added a dowel rod on the inside to create a little bit more structure, but I did not manage to film that part. To create the fake leather handle itself, I just cut up a bunch of strips of scrap foam and hot glued them onto the PVC and wrapped them around. Tried to make them look as natural as I possibly could, and for how crude of a method is, it actually didn't turn out looking too bad. It's pretty convincingly fake leather scraps. And speaking of crude methods, for the bottom of the scythe that is supposed to look like a stake, all I did was pile up a bunch of Worbla scraps and heat them up, and then I globbed them onto the very bottom of the PVC and kind of tried to sculpt them into a general pointed stake shape. I did this for the entire stake section and also created a little bevel at the bottom of the leather handle area. And now that my scythe was starting to resemble something, it was time to clean up some of my rough foam cuts and general messiness with my Dremel. And let me just say, this was not nearly as effective as I hoped it would be. I was hoping to create the illusion of a blade by adding a 45-degree bevel around all of the edges, but since number one, this foam was cut somewhat unevenly, and number two, there were also dowel rods in the middle of it, causing it to be a bit more uneven than usual, that bevel ended up looking like absolute rubbish. And though I tried sanding and trying to adjust it to make it look good, and this method has worked well for me in the past, I really did not like the way the blade was coming out, and that meant I was in a little bit of a pickle.
Hello. Every time I take off a respirator, I look and feel insane. There's no getting past it. So this is how the scythe is looking so far. I think I'm pretty satisfied with it. Like the general construction is kind of done and laid out, which is good because that did not take me as long as I thought it would. The only issue is that with using craft foam and kind of in the way I did it, there's just like a lot of messy spots going on the blade. There's just like a lot of jagged edges that kind of resulted from me trying to Dremel an edge into the blade and these pieces not exactly being even because there's like some dowel rods inside this. From afar, it like looks fine and looks okay, but it's still not really clean enough for my liking. I also am battling the fact that I don't have like a ton of time to get this done this week, and a lot of the things that I could use to improve this, like quick seal or foam clay or something like that, have relatively long curing times. So that kind of just does not work for the time frame of this video at all. So against my better judgment and kind of against part of the goal of this video being a stash busting video, I think that I might go and pick up some thermoplastic. I think my plan would be to just encase the edge of the blade in some thermoplastic to like give it a little bit more structure and make sure like the edge of the blade is at least a little bit more smooth. And then I can also use it to like add more detail to the stake side of this. There's a shape here that I think I'm gonna make out of scrap thermoplastic. It's not ideal because I was trying not to buy new materials for this. But I also thought that I had more thermoplastic lying around than I actually do, so it is what it is. So I guess that means we're going on a little adventure. So I'm back from the craft store, and they did not have any thermoplastic. Awesome, cool. I just drove an hour to get that is all. It's really frustrating because they used to carry it and I was in there and they carried it not even that long ago. I remember thinking, oh, well, this is nice. If I ever need thermoplastic, I can just run out to the craft store and get it instead of ordering it offline. That's not a thing. So instead, I'm improvising a little bit here and no idea if it's gonna work or how well it's going to work. So against my better judgment, I got more craft foam. This is mainly just to maybe put on the edges of the scythe and kind of smooth things out a little bit. And then also, I was planning on trying to use UV resin on the blade of the scythe to get like a really smooth finish, and then I can paint on top of that and then maybe use like an enamel on top of that. But it's extremely overcast right now and cloudy and dark. I have no way to cure UV resin right now. It's really helpful. I don't know, I'm at a loss in this video, you guys. It's just nothing's working. Nothing's working. Instead, I did manage to find some white plasti dip. so I can at least use a couple of coats of this to kind of achieve a similar finish that I would get with UV resin. I'm out here trying things. What's a girl gotta do to just have a beautiful Fisma summer scythe? Is that too much to ask? Apparently it kind of is. All that being said, this does already look a little bit cool, so I'm not too mad at it. So while ideas about how to clean up the scythe blade are rattling around in my head, I'm going to do something that's a little bit straightforward, and I'm going to make this weird tip thing that's on the end of the scythe. I don't know what it is, why it's there. It's just a thing that looks kind of cool. So it kind of looks like these are just triangular looking sharp prongs. I don't know what else to call them. Excuse my very technical terminology. It looks like a fancy number 7, doesn't it? Come here. Sort of like so. I think that looks pretty good.
So I of course proceeded to trace out and glue on all of the remaining prongs. Next, I took some rivets and hot glued them onto the empty section of the PVC to try to match the details in the original prop. I also missed this fin in the scythe in my original pattern, so I hot glued that on. And I decided the easiest way to deal with the messiness of the blade was to cover the edge in an extra thin layer of EVA foam. So I traced the blade edge pattern onto some 3mm sheets, cut those out, and then glued those pieces onto the blade with a little bit of barge cement. I wanted the fake leather handle to look a little bit more aged and less uniform, so I added a little bit more detail to that with my wood burning tool. This was nothing too elaborate. I was really just adding some random lines and weathering. And so far I was way happier with the results of both of these tweaks. It definitely helped to clean things up and make everything look a lot more intentional. But of course, I am me after all, so I wasn't quite done with adding detail. Before calling it quits, I added some wooden bark texture to the stake end with just a little bit of hot glue, and if that wasn't enough, I also used hot glue to seal all of the grooves and gaps in the blade. I also added a couple more rivets to the head of the scythe because I am an absolute sucker for detail, and I also heat sealed all of the parts of the scythe that were foam before taking this baby outside to begin the painting process. I used Plasti-Dip as a primer for this and used the old cosplay hack where you soak it in some hot water before you spray it to help it to spray more evenly, and that definitely did the trick because after about 5 layers of this, probably my scythe was definitely looking a lot less crusty. And once that was dry, I gave all of the metallic parts a once over with the chromiest metallic spray paint that I could possibly find.
I've literally been watching paint dry for the past hour. It's still not dry.
One eternity later.
Okay, after literally watching paint dry for an hour, the scythe is finally primed, and then I also have just a base layer of chrome on the blade part. This, for some reason, took literally so long to dry. Like, I did probably do maybe 4 coats just to like really get a nice healthy layer on there. I guess the humidity today was just a little bit too much for spray paint, and I did accidentally touch it and create an area with fingerprints. I've tried to cover it up a couple of times and the paint is not cooperating with me. That aside, it's really not bad, and I'm just going to call it free weathering, because in the show, I'm pretty sure this weapon is like thousands of years old. It's like a Slayer relic. From far away, you can't really tell how messed up and messy it is. Close up, a bit of a different story, but like, just don't look at it close. Avert your gaze. Where's my masking tape? Also, how many times have I asked that just in this video? Oh, there it is. Bam. At the very least, I'm now to the actual fun part of the video in the process. You guys know what that is. I just like to paint stuff. I love to weather stuff. I like to whip out the old airbrush and go to town. And I'm hoping that a pretty decent paint job will prevent this from looking as crusty as it is right now. It's fine. It's all good. Sometimes you make something and it's a little crusty and you deal. Let's paint this scythe.
I of course began the paint job by just blocking in all of the flat colors. And after a few layers of that, I started adding in some bevels and shadows in a couple of areas. Painted on the 2 black stripes on the scythe handle, gave the blade a little bit of dimension to prevent it from looking too flat. And then I started in on the detail painting. I painted the end of the stake the lighter color of exposed wood. I added more variation of brown tones to the leather handle, and then I grabbed some silver metallic acrylic and started dry brushing a couple areas of the scythe blade. I also dry brushed on some silver scuff marks to give the illusion of weathering. And dry brushed even more brown and gold tones onto the leather handle, and did the same for the fake wood on the bottom stake, which really began to make things pop. I swear I will never get tired of making fake wood. There's something so satisfying about it. Finally, I did some washes around the hardware to make it look a little bit more weathered and pop out. And added even more dimension around the blade with some shadows and a dark wash. And finally, it was time for me to scrounge up my half-empty clear coat cans and try to salvage what little I could to seal up the paint job. And with that, we have a finished Buffy the Vampire Slayer scythe, and it is time for the reveal.
Hello, and welcome to the end of the video. Just as a super quick wrap up, I know that this was probably a shorter video than usual, probably also a little bit less complex than some of the things that I've been making recently, but this was one of those weeks where earlier in the week I was trying to do a different video topic and the art block just got the best of me, and for whatever reason that just really would not take, so I kind of pivoted a little bit, but this was on my list of things to do during this Halloween season because I just selfishly really love Buffy the Vampire Slayer, and ever since I saw the scythe in the show, I thought that it was really cool, and I wanted to have it both as a cosplay item and quite honestly as just a home decor item. It's probably gonna go on my wall somewhere whenever I am not actively using it for Buffy Summers cosplay. I'm really satisfied with how this build went, honestly. I don't have too many gripes with how the prop itself turned out. I did make a couple of like little changes, especially to the proportions of the scythe. It's like a little bit shorter in the show, but I kind of like the longer aesthetic, so I did kind of tweak that a little bit. But otherwise, I tried to stick to the show's design as much as I possibly can, and I think that I actually did pretty well, especially since this was made in about 2 days. I think if I had one critique, it would really just be the thickness of the blade. I think aesthetically it works pretty well for this style of prop actually, because I don't know, it's kind of so exaggerated to begin with that I don't really notice the fact that the blade itself is kind of bulky. A lot of times whenever I make a prop that is bladed and is supposed to look super sharp and it looks bulky, it just like doesn't look right. It takes away from the idea that something is supposed to be able to cut things. Last time I made a sword prop, I spent so long just trying to sand down and really make it look like it was sharp, but I don't think this ended up looking too bad. If you get really close to it, it obviously looks very messy because time restraints meant that I didn't have time to like redo too much. I also sealed a lot of this with hot glue, as you guys saw, so in a pinch with time constraints, glue kind of does the trick, and it kind of just makes it look like certain parts are welded. Also, I think the hot glue actually looks pretty great on the end that's supposed to be a stake because it just adds a lot of like very rigid texture. Overall, I am very happy with this weapon. I'm super excited to like dress up as Buffy and go to one of my functions. Anyways, like I said, I know that this was probably a shorter video, maybe a little bit less involved, less complex. Like, you guys have seen me make weapons before, so a lot of these techniques are also like not new, but all the same, I really hope that you enjoyed the video. I hope that you are excited for spooky season content because I am so excited. I'm so here. I'm honestly still in the process of deciding what my big Halloween project is going to be, which is not a good thing because it is already October. So that's not great. But I am planning on doing a lot of really fun stuff. So if you would like to stick around and see all of that, like the video, comment on the video if you would like to show it some affection, and subscribe to the channel if you want to stick around for more whimsical cosplay nonsense. That's all that I provide to the world at this point. What can I say? I found my calling. Thank you so much for watching, especially if you watched to the end of the video. And as always, the biggest thank you for this video and every single one of my videos goes to my patrons and especially my executive producers.
Marita Wasner, Veli Smelly, Stabby Horse, VickyArt16, Audra, Ariana Trenta, Ember Creeps, Jaden Cypher, Cardia X, Christina Kimtia Art, Call Me Ash, Blaze Ravenscar, Lunira, Mads Arts, Mossy Raven, A Big Black Bug Bit a Big Brown Bear. I recorded that like at least 5 times for the record. I'm not saying that name on the internet. ABW Makes, Sarah, Hopes and Crafts, Ice Kavan, Awendu, Liana, Ermler Jean, Anubix, Breeza, Sony, Brian, Phoenix, Rose Draconi, Freedom and Gus Gus, Kat, Dodo, Zyle S, Agent.Sketchy, Thea Maia, Lovisa, Eloquent Silence, Enozyne, India Gloom, Hypnos, Katie, Sweet Winter Garden, Grabby Drop, I Hang Out with Cats at Parties, and Bean the Bread.
Oh, by the way, if the apocalypse comes, beat me.